Hey, welcome to Worse Than the Borg, the Star Trek podcast for everyone, where apparently we spend most of our time trying to make our computers work and getting our Picards to kiss. We unpack new episodes of Star Trek with Star Trek fans new and old, and each week we raise funds for causes near and dear to us in the name of solidarity, reconciliation, and justice. I am your captain, Shane Holland, and I'm here with my number one, Ron Sly. Hello, Ronnie.
Hello.
And our chief engineer, Ravi Joshi. Hey, Ravi.
Hello again, Shane.
We are here to talk about this week's episode of Star Trek Discovery, and I am very excited to welcome aboard this week's special guest, Ambassador Erin Marchak. Hey, Erin.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hey.
Collectively, we are worse than the Borg. And to start off, Ron, would you be able to lead us off with our commitment to reconciliation?
Absolutely. This mission log is being recorded on Treaty 13 land, and the participants are committed to reconciliation here on Earth. We believe the United Federation of Planets would fully support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. All tuned-in Terrans are encouraged to participate in the direct action discussed later in this log.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. And let's get right to it. Erin, hi. I want to know, what is your relationship to Star Trek? Have you been watching Discovery? Did you watch the old series? Tell us about it.
So, first off, I have watched 2 episodes of Discovery, the pilot and this one. So I think there's some context I've been missing here. I'm going to do my best.
We are going to have a lot to talk about this episode because it was all in jokes and references to the entire series. But go on.
Yeah, see, I didn't get any of that. My history with Star Trek is actually really interesting. I didn't actually watch it when it was on TV. I was a angry high school kid when it was on, and I was actually really turned off by like the hypersexualization of women in the series. I found it I couldn't get into it. It was such a barrier for me because despite the sheer engineering effort of Seven of Nine's costume, I felt isolated and couldn't actually participate in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in tech. And to be honest, there's a lot of water cooler talk around Star Trek when you work in technology. And
No
so
kidding.
a few years ago, I decided to I wanted to be able to participate in this water cooler talk because it sounded cool. And what I did was I went from TNG, so the Next Generation, to Discovery. I found out all of the star dates of every single episode that was aired, and I watched it chronologically. But I also removed all of the episodes that were less than 7 stars on IMDb. So I haven't seen the first season of TNG. I don't care about the crystalline entity. That was not an important plot point. But through this, I ended up kind of watching it almost as if they kind of came out together. I saw how the major plot streams kind of flowed through each of the series, and I really did fall in love with it. And I think that there are some barriers, there are some issues with representation in the series, but there's also some really beautiful points. And Seven of Nine is one of my favorite characters now. But it was because of the time that I had to spend with that instead of just looking at kind of the marketing piece that frankly was her costume.
Wow, I am so interested in your journey with Star Trek. That is fascinating. And I can see how, as someone who doesn't watch it, seeing, like you said, the marketing of Seven of Nine and even some of the plots of the older episodes, how anti-feminist the show was. But I like that you decided to dig in your heels a little bit and actually check it out. And I agree that there are some little nuggets of awesomeness and progressiveness in there that I think pervade the cultural memory more than were actually present in the entire series, the entire franchise.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think, was, especially at that point, was push and pull between the producers and the marketing team wanting to go after these markets, with the hypersexualization, with the more sensational pieces, but the writers and the actors, and you could see this a lot with Deep Space Nine. Now I'm just ranting about Star Trek, where they did want to dig in, and they did want to explore some cool stuff that you can only do through sci-fi.
Awesome. Ravi?
I think that something we've talked about also is how Discovery has these moments that are new and exciting, and we've even referenced them as why haven't they done this before? And they had done it before, but either it was disguised behind hypersexualization or marketing or what have you in previous series, and so it just feels like it's landing in this series. And Erin, I'm so interested to see what you think when you do catch up, because I think that's something we've noticed, is that they have had little breakthroughs and blips throughout the past 50 years, 60 years, but they've sometimes gone unnoticed because maybe it was too globbed on underneath, or it was underneath a whole globbed on layer of marketing and you know, mainstream representation. So it's something that's a reoccurring theme in this podcast.
You're destined to be a Trek fan if you're willing to put star dates into a spreadsheet and then organize your watch through. So
I have to know, did you do the work yourself on that, or did you find the list on Reddit or something?
No, there's an infinite amount of Trekkies out there that will organize everything. So I found the list, and then if it was a bad episode, like there's a weird amount of episodes that literally have the phrase Space Irish, I just skipped those.
Those are some of the best episodes of Star Trek.
Are they? Are they?
They're not. I'm lying to you.
I think we're referring to Up the Long Ladder. Is that what you mean by Space Irish?
No, if you go through the IMDb summaries, some of them actually use that phrase.
There are literally 4 episodes devoted to Space Irish or holographic Irish people.
What?
At least 4.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to hear your take on the modern stuff because writers seem to be doing a lot to try and address those criticisms that would turn people away. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, me too. There isn't a lot of Trek related news this week, but we both put up our hands. But first of all, I saw Colm Meaney in a Christmas commercial. He was dressed up as Santa Claus for the, I guess, Irish department store ? Aldi's, and he's definitely Space Irish, but
the
he's
OG Space Irish.
OG Space Irish, and now he is commercial Santa Claus, and I highly recommend everyone check out the cutest commercial. And he's only in it at the very end physically, but he narrates the whole thing, and it's wonderful to hear his voice. And also, I tweeted this week, and Ian Alexander liked one of my tweets, so woo!
That's awesome.
Ronnie, did you have any Trek related news this week?
I did just see on Twitter today, scroll by, today is actually the anniversary of the first interracial kiss on TV, which happened, as we know, on Star Trek. So kind of referencing our previous conversation, there are these moments that are being pushed forward, although this famously is a moment of great representation, but also bad representation because you can't actually see the kiss. They just kind of get it in there, so they kind of got the credit, but was it good representation? I don't know. It was covered up with a lot of BS.
Yeah, Shatner and Nichelle Nichols had to basically trick them into filming it, if I remember correctly. They said that they weren't going to do it, and it was the very last take of the day, and they just snuck it in there anyways and snuck it past the censor somehow at a time when you couldn't do that. Yeah, very cool anniversary.
And we're still in a world where Star Trek is making nerds mad. So
yes, love it.
Let's celebrate that.
All right. Well, after our episode discussion, be sure to listen up as we tell you who we're going to support in this week's direct action. But let's take a very quick break, and we will return with our breakdown of the latest episode of Star Trek. Welcome back to Worse Than the Borg. This week we are discussing Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 6, Scavengers. It was directed by Douglas Arniakowski and written by Ann Kofel Saunders. Ravi, can you tell us what happened in this episode?
Absolutely. There are spoilers ahead, folks. The USS Discovery A is docked at Starfleet and Federation headquarters awaiting deployment. The ship has been retrofitted with programmable matter, detached nacelles, and other exciting 32nd century upgrades, including comm badges that act as tricorders and personal transporters. Book ship suddenly appears, and Saru and Burnham receive a 3-old-week message from him revealing that the burn might not have happened all at once, and that he has proof in the form of a black box recording. Burnham wishes to find Book and continue her personal quest to discover the source of the burn and ultimately reform the Federation. Saru denies Burnham the request as it does not comply with their orders. Burnham goes behind Saru's back to rescue Booker from the Emerald Chain salvage yard and slave camp on Hunau. Giorgio, meanwhile, is suffering from PTSD-induced flashbacks relating to the Mirror Universe. The pair pose as traitors to infiltrate the camp and rescue Book and the other slaves. They succeed, and Michael delivers information to Saru and Starfleet, but at the cost of losing trust between the two. Burnham is officially reprimanded and demoted from her position as Saru's #1. And that is the episode wrap up in under a minute.
I am surprised that I was the only one that caught that they renamed the ship, that they gave the Discovery the A classification, which is so important in the Star Trek universe. But I can already tell Erin is like, who gives a shit? Like,
I got so many more questions than like just renaming a ship here. Like, it's important, you know. Ships' names are important. That's cool.
I mean, they are like canonizing a big bit of discussion that happened about when ships get the letter designations. It wasn't entirely clear, I feel like, until the last couple of episodes when finally we know that a ship can be retrofitted or rebuilt. And you know, it's heavily implied previously, but now we know.
So does each time that they like blow up the Enterprise, did it get a new letter historically?
That's correct. In fact,
Okay,
the very
so this works then.
Yeah, it first happened in Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. The ship is destroyed at the end of the last movie, and at the end of Star Trek 4, they get a new ship, and it's literally the exact same model with a new letter A put at the end of 1701. And it was a big reveal at the time, and now we see this happen all the time. The Enterprise D turned into the Enterprise E after it was destroyed in a crash landing. We saw the Voyager J last week, the 11th generation of the USS Voyager. So yeah, this was nifty to see that not only can ships be renamed after they've been destroyed, but they can be renamed just after getting a major upgrade. I thought that was really cool.
So that then there's a fixed percentage point in which the ship gets like, there's a percentage point somewhere in this world where if like you destroy enough of a ship or you replace enough of a ship, it is a new ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Or there's a key part of the ship that if you destroy, then it's that thing.
Oh,
what is a ship?
It's the water.
Well,
What is a ship?
What is a ship now, especially if it's all just programmable matter? I mean, a ship could probably fit in your hand and then you could just go boop and it turns into some, 17 deck monstrosity. What is matter in this universe? It's
Also,
hard to know.
these cells are separated, which I was sort of like, I don't understand. How are they separated?
Jumping ahead to the the climax of this episode when Book's ship does that 180-degree turn where it comes apart, every piece turns around itself and it reorganizes. Like, why couldn't they do that? It makes sense if you got the tech.
This was the big question that I had with my very little context on the episode. I thought the series was set pre-Federation.
This is a perfect
But they have all
episode
this
to
cool
come in.
technology.
Okay. So what happened was at the end of season 2, the Discovery jumps 980 years into the future so as to stop a malicious AI from taking over the Federation and potentially destroying the universe. When the Discovery arrives in the 32nd century, a cataclysmic event called the Burn happened, which destroyed every ship that was in warp at the time, and it prevented everyone from resuming using warp travel as a means to travel through the galaxy. So now what remains of the Federation are kind of isolated pockets of small planetary controlled systems and syndicates. The Federation, it went from 350 planets down to 35. Everything is a mess, but the Discovery is determined to kind of reform the Federation to what it once was. So just like the audience, the crew of the USS Discovery are fish out of water. They are in a strange new world, in a strange new time, and they are figuring out all of this new weird tech with the rest of us. I hope that helps explain a little bit of your question, but you are not wrong for being like, what the fuck?
There was a lot of those periods throughout this episode. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So like I've seen Picard. Is this like post Picard then?
Much post Picard.
Okay, so there's still an evil AI somewhere. Haha.
So the Discovery
Different
destroyed
evil AI.
the evil AI, thankfully.
A
before the
different
Picard
evil
time.
AI or the same evil AI?
Oh, wait. Oh, right. There are two different evil. Oh, I wonder. No. They're totally different evil AI. They totally recycled a plot for their other show.
What? Never. Never.
Star Trek recycling plots? Insane.
Never.
We see Book's ship and we get hailed by a cat, and as a cat person, I was once again in love to see Grudge in a starring role in the episode. I don't know if anyone else here likes cats, but every scene involving Grudge in this season has been amazing. Watching Ensign Tilly trying to cat herd at one point was a really fun scene and very Star Trek, and rather surprising for the character of Tilly's development, I thought. I mean, I assumed she would be a cat person, but it's much more interesting that she's not.
I agree. I was like, what? Tilly should be like in her element. This is like a cute, fluffy thing. She's a cute, fluffy thing. Like,
No, she's much more competent than that.
Yeah, I mean, she has definitely grown a lot, but I thought it was an interesting like writer's choice to make her say that she didn't like the cat when like usually Tilly is us. She's us standing there on the deck and saying what we're thinking. But we're all thinking like, yay, cat, like, you know, it's our new spot. And she says, I don't like you. Which is the opposite of what.
So for somebody who doesn't like a cat, she really goes whole hog of the hugging of Grudge. Like in this
I also
episode.
thought that was a little weird.
Well,
Can I just come out and say it? Like, this episode had a lot of things that, okay, I'll just say it. I didn't like this episode so much. And a lot of it was for reasons like that. Like, there's a lot of inconsistencies or things that were said but not acted. This one, I think they dropped the ball on. I'm going to go so bold as to say that they dropped the ball on some writing things.
Boldly go.
Wow.
Yeah, and part of it was I thought there were a lot of cliches and tropes that made their way into this episode. Like, I almost felt like I could predict the entire plot of the episode from the first act onwards. And I feel like they kind of just dropped some emotional moments that could have been more heightened or elevated. And
I will say they like cried. There was like 5 crying scenes. There was a lot of crying in this episode.
Oh yeah.
And I just sort of felt like where the third season has been such a high, they might have advanced some important plots, but you know, it was all predictable. There's only one aspect of this that wasn't kind of predictable, which is that the Andorian quasi-medical guy who had been planting the thing in their necks, he survived or seems to have survived.
Mm-hmm.
That was outside that, you know, it would be very common for him to die, you know, taking a bullet, seeking redemption for his, you know, his heirs as you know, on the camp. That was the only thing that kind of stood out, and everything else is just case in point for me. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, is their kiss, Michael and Book's kiss. It didn't happen at any kind of moment that was interesting or novel to their characters. It was just sort of like, I have to pause the elevator.
I'm sorry. I have to disagree.
No, pausing an elevator is important. Pausing like the turbo lift. Pausing the turbo lift is necessary.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything that important. Go ahead. Sorry, Shane.
No, Erin, you're the guest. Please, I'm in agreement with you, but please, I want to hear what you have to say.
Oh no! Like anything that important happens ever with a character, it needs to happen in like a pause or a mechanically blocked or some kind of like crisis turbo lift. Like,
oh yeah, I mean that's where all major plot developments happen, in, you know, a stasis tube. I totally bought that. I thought that conversation was actually the more organic conversation in the entire episode. They've spent this entire season kind of coyly being like, I'm not going to get into you. You're a space pirate and I'm a Federation officer. It just can't really work. And they realize that they have much more in common with each other. And the kiss happens over like, what's the line? I wrote down the line because I just thought,
this isn't the science lab or something.
This isn't the science lab. And then she goes, oh, we have these new badges, and he kisses her. Oh, I thought it was romantic. I thought it was realistic. I don't know. I bought that scene more than I bought this episode.
I mean,
for many of our listeners.
Sorry, I just want to. I bought the like D plot of Linus popping into and out of every scene, like totally disrupting the stuck in the turbolift Jeffries tube.
I want to
trope.
see that lower decks episode for sure.
Well, for our listeners may not fully understand that we've gone through this entire episode being Linus with the recording equipment and everything. Like, we clearly do not know how to work on episode 6. We clearly do not know how to work the internet or our recording devices. So
It's true. We are popping
are
in and
all
out like
Linus.
Linus. This episode, yeah, I would agree in general. It was uneven. It's definitely that mid-season, let's set up the last half of the season episode, where the episode before kind of wrapped up the journey that we've been on so far. This one is setting up the journey that we're about to go on. But when will Star Trek Discovery make a mid-season episode that doesn't explicitly do these things? Why can't they just give us a solid episode?
They're leaning very hard into the I'm trying to make a next generation episode. Like we liberated 40 slaves in 40 minutes. Like it's very very classic do-gooder Star Trek, but it's still in this weird box where they're trying to flesh out the new environment they're in the 32nd century. Like Erin was saying, like, why do they have all of this stuff? Like it doesn't really track.
Ravi, what would you say?
Well, I think that's actually the missed opportunity, right? Is third season Discovery feels like with all the scarcity that they're dealing with all the fires that they're putting out, which I thought was an interesting line. Why wasn't it more of a discussion as to like weren't they presented with more of a hard choice to free the slaves on this in this work camp versus saving the universe? That would have been an interesting point of tension, that they just kind of were like, we're going to do both. We're doing both. And it would have revealed more about the characters if they used that as a moment to be like, we don't know if we can do both. There's a lot of risk. We could guarantee getting this out of the camp right now, or we could free the slaves that we, and one of whom we might have a burgeoning romance with. Like, that was a whole missed point, and I guess there's a series of those that were sort of like, oh, you could have gone there.
But maybe they will, because this is a conversation that Saru has with Burnham on the ship before she decides to do her own thing, which is she says, a man's life is at stake, and Saru just says there are a lot of lives, right? Like we have to be balancing the
needs of the many.
Yeah, but Burnham shows that she can have her cake and eat it too, over and over.
Erin?
Well, I think like going from like classical TNG, one of the cool things that I really liked about it is they would have this like zero sum, like win-lose scenario, and then like work together as a team to find out how both sides could win. And of course, that's more of a diplomacy style Star Trek. But the piece that, as like coming from a TNG fan, the piece here was like, you didn't see the crew working together. And maybe this is, again, context I'm missing, but it wasn't like, okay, you want to do this thing, I want to do this thing. There are situations that we can't compromise on, but how can we build it together? Because like the cool part about TNG was nobody was ever dismissed. And Picard was always leaning in and interested to see their perspectives, even if it was like, well, that's definitely not true. There can't be a time bubble, and then there's a time bubble or something.
That actually kind of brings up a pretty interesting point about where the crew are this season so far and where they've been. You are right that we didn't really see the crew working together this episode to overcome a problem, except that we kind of do. The crew of the Discovery itself is really intertwined. One of the things that I didn't mention in my rundown of what happened last year is that Michael gets sent into the future a year ahead of the USS Discovery. So she's actually been apart from her crew for a full year and only just recently rejoined them. So she already is a bit of an outsider again from the rest of the ship. We did get moments where we see Stamets bonding with Adira and Stamets and Culber having some bedroom talk, and we see Tilly giving Saru some great advice about usually I would stand with Michael, but she's really fucked all of us over this time. So we do actually get that the crew of Discovery is working in tandem, and that they have the goals of, they have a shared goal, shared common interests. And Michael is the one who is really headstrong this season, because she's had a year where she didn't have to follow those rules, and she thinks maybe that is the better way. I think we're going to explore what that means in the last half of the season. I just wish that, we didn't set it up so, ham-fisted.
If that's where it's going, I'm a little bit disappointed, I gotta say, because the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Discovery were this arc already. Burnham is an island. She is the only human to ever grow up on Vulcan, and she is the only woman named Michael. Weirdly,
she's the most important person in the universe on the most important ship in the galaxy.
And she disobeys direct orders. It results in the death of a lot of people, and she has to overcome and prove that she's who she says she is. And I guess maybe this journey for her is to get maybe out of the Federation. It doesn't work for her, and it never has.
She does take off her comm badge at the end of the episode, very discreetly, but very distinctly.
I don't think that was discreet at all, to the audience. Anyway.
Okay, well, yeah, no, sorry, not to us, but in the context of the scene, it was discreetly, but to us, it was very obvious.
Yeah. And I mean, new representation, same as the old representation. We were talking in the last episode about how we have 2 queer couples now, but both of them have experienced a bury your gaze moment. And Star Trek also right now in the production canon has 2 leading Black women, and both of them are absolutely unable to follow the rules. And it's just we're so close yet so far.
Actually, 3, Rafi in Star Trek, Rafi in Star Trek Picard, also an outsider who might be drug addicted and can't follow the rules. Yeah, so you're right. This is a problem. Ravi, what would you add to this?
I want to agree. I also just, certain characters are sort of falling flat. At the beginning of season 3, Saru appears to be jumping into this new character arc. So first 2 seasons, he has to overcome his fears, very literally and biologically. But then in season 3, he started in this whole new adventure of living into the new responsibilities and the tough decisions of being the captain, which I think is such a great character development for him. But my question is, there's a number of characters that seem to be just falling by the wayside, and this episode put a little emphasis on that. What is Tilly, and where is she going? And also Philippa. I know she's super entertaining to watch.
Oh my god!
But why is she here?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of characters where I'm like, what's going on?
Philippa is the Giorgio, might be a cyborg, might also be the captain. I'm sure I saw her die. What is going on? Again, I haven't seen a lot of this context.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can't spoil the entire 2 seasons for you, so that will have to leave some of those questions for you, so you actually watch the first 2 seasons.
She has excellent eyeliner, though.
I mean, we're actually just supporting the production of Star Trek Discovery. So Michelle Yeoh can come to Toronto a couple times a year, be an absolute bitch to everyone around her, get paid, and go home. I love it. There are Erin, if you are here for Giorgio's eyeliner, there are definitely eyeliner moments from the rest of the season. Go back and watch. It's so
much
good.
Cat eye.
I feel like Yo is just Ab's just telling them that she's gonna do, and then she just goes and does it.
I love it.
It's so good.
I love it.
If you're really confused, you can save your questions for our What the Trek segment, and I will be forced to answer any questions you may have. I also am frustrated by the Giorgio thing, because it is clear that they are setting up another Star Trek series, Section 31, which is yet to be filmed. This feels like we're being strong-armed into a pitch for this show. I will
let that woman strong arm me into anything. I'll be honest with you.
Yes, same. Absolutely. But they don't need to sell it this hard. I don't need this backstory that is not going to be resolved in Star Trek Discovery. It's going to be resolved in Section 31. I don't need this forced upon me. I just want to see Giorgio being awesome up until the moment where she decides, you know what, I'm gone. And that's it. Just exit and do your own show.
Is she going to find a way of teleporting back 900 years? Is that going to be a thing?
Or is it about establishing Section 31 in the future? Is it going to be a second show set in the 32nd century? Because we already have 2 shows set in the 25th century now. Oh my God, there's too many centuries. There's too many shows.
I'll be interested to see how that develops. I'm also interested to see how many Star Treks they can sustain, because this was a critique that they had when back in the day where they had The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager that were almost all in the same thing. And it was too much for the audience to handle. And part of this is how much can they sustain having, how many are, I'm counting 4 right now?
Picard,
Ronnie?
Discovery, and
Lower
Lower Decks
Decks
are on right now, and then we have the Janeway show, the Section 31 show, and Strange New Worlds Captain Pike show. So there was going to be 6. Yeah, like
6 concurrent Star Treks. Like how many? Okay, so but if it's I guess what I'm hoping is like I would take 2 Star Treks that were exceptionally written, and I wonder if what we're risking is what happened with Voyager, which is they just didn't have, all the writers got left and they were left with a budget show because they didn't want to invest money into it, and no, they weren't taking any risks because I think they wanted as safe as possible.
Erin?
Well, so there's two things on this. First thing is animated shows are really cheap to produce comparatively.
Yes.
So you can get kind of higher quality, or you can pay the writers and the voice actors a higher amount because of the like lower production costs of it. So there's that opportunity. And then 2, we are comparing pre-streaming audiences to post-streaming audiences, because how we consume media today is really, really different than how we consume media in 2000.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are waiting for this season to finish before they even begin it so that they can just watch from episode 1 to 10 in 3 days.
Yeah, and like there wasn't the need to like make sure that you scheduled or DVR'd all of your episodes to keep up with it. Like you can just binge whenever it's convenient for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I did with season 1, by the way. As avid a fan, I was just not interested in watching week for week. It takes a podcast to motivate me to watch.
Yeah, I wait 30 years and then I
there were, I don't know, I feel like this episode threw out a bunch of themes that it didn't really wrap up in any meaningful way. But one of the ones that I wanted to talk about was this desire to return to normal, or the search for normalcy that Saru seems to be on in particular this season. And I do like that it points out kind of the flaw in that thinking, in that maybe normal wasn't perfect or even good, and maybe the new normal needs to be different. But am I putting those words into the show's mouth, or is this something that the show is doing? Ron?
I don't know. You know, like I think our current lens is, yeah, we're definitely looking for that normalcy. So I can see how we are projecting that, but we've talked a lot on this show about how the show seems to be predicting a lot of the like soul food that we needed, even though it was produced prior to the pandemic. So I don't know. It's hard to say if they're actually being so forward thinking or we're just getting out of it what we need. Which, you know, if it's us getting out of it what we need, you know, that's what, you know, I think we all did with the previous Star Treks, right? You know, Erin's story today about how she got into it, right? You find the bits that you want. So if that's what you want and need right now, Shane, yeah, the writers did it. They did it for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really needed that. Ravi, what do you have to say?
No, I think that's an astute point about getting back to normal. It seems to be what they're clutching for. But look at the normal for the Federation is, I think, what is happening. They're grasping. I think they're putting out small fires near the end of the episode where they said, you know, normal for you is putting out small fires. And he nods along and says, yeah. And I think that's such an important piece. Is like, if we're returning to normal, COVID, we're trying to return to normal. Normal wasn't exactly, we were struggling. Let's face it, like normal was, it's not as though we'll magically resolve the mental health issues, the struggles with identity, the struggles we're all going through. And it does feel like we've spent a lot of our lives putting out small fires. So that return to normalcy, I think, is a really important thing. And I think what's coming ahead for Discovery is, listen, it can jump into the fight to help put out small fires, but this whole thing of what Michael's trying to do is, hey, I'm going to do you all a solid and go rogue and try to fix the problem that you've been putting up with. I think we've all been dealing with some aspect of that in our lives where we're just trying to stitch it together, and we need a Michael Burnham to come in and say, actually, I'm dealing with this thing that you knew that you were dealing with, but haven't had the opportunity to actually deal with it. So I kind of like that metaphor quite a bit. I'm just skeptical that normal was that much better or that much more helpful for the Federation or us all. There, heavy, clunky metaphor wedged in.
Erin.
Yeah, I like Ravi. I think your kind of point of this whole thing of like what is a new normal and how do we kind of like orchestrate ourselves really kind of is like a larger. I like that part of this. And particularly kind of how I was complaining, like, it's not the old captains. And when you look at the old series, it's all people who have had, the captains are all people who've had a lot of experience leading. Even if they're like entering a new space station, they have experience in a leadership position. While in the bits of Discovery that I've seen, it's people learning how to lead together. And I think like a lot of the leadership that we've seen or that I've worked through this year, I'm a team lead on my team. And of course, you're a team lead on a team. Anyway, a lot of the experience that I've had this year leading a team has been leadership through times of change. And how do you create certainty and structure and kind of a North Star on a team that is going through an incredible amount of change and trying to define a new normal? And it's hard. And so seeing Captain Sorrow try to figure that out for himself was really, really interesting, because it is somebody who's trying to step up, even though he's like 1 billion feet tall, into leadership.
Thank you all for really helping me to articulate that thought that I had. I also kind of agree with you, or not kind of, I fully agree with you, Ravi, that returning to normal for us means, returning to putting out the small fires, not just that COVID has created, but that we're living through, the opioid epidemic and the homelessness epidemic and the migrancy and climate change issues. Returning to normal for us means burying our heads in the sand. And this episode was written at a time in the third year of Donald Trump's presidency, and the writer's room is in the States. So I'm sure their viewpoint was like, when this is all over in 5 years, who knows at the time, do we just go back to the way things were? Or do we go out and seek that black box and find out the cause of the burn and really try to make the future a better place, not just a place that we can all survive in?
God, is the burn a metaphor for the Trump presidency? Are we just going to call it the burn?
That's how I'm going to remember
I'd like to believe that the burn is like the 2008 financial crash or something like that. Something more insidious, like it's before now.
Oh, true. It did happen much. Okay, yeah, I can see how that works. I can see.
And I guess that's to drive the point home. I guess that's it, right? Is that the burn, the chaos that they're entering into didn't start with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just one syndicate along the way, right? Like what's happening here is that there is a crisis that was created far, far long ago, and we don't know all the details of it, but something happened where there was a breaking off point, and the plot points that are unfolding are all under that veil. And I kind of like that framing. Like I like that framing that we're trying to uncover that and figure out more about that, but it's not something that's obvious and right in front of you. I kind of like all of that. And by the way, the science of triangulating when a burn happened based on a date stamp, I'm so on board for this.
I loved it. I bought it immediately. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to tag on to what Erin was saying about, the like leading through change. I think we're seeing the writers kind of grapple with, is it going to be Saru's like way of leadership that brings about change? Is it going to be Burnham's way of like, which is right? That seems to be the like kind of core issue of this episode is, like yes, the Federation is in charge, so Saru's right, Tilly's right, the Admiral's right.
Burnham's right.
She gets demoted. But no, Burnham's wrong. She got demoted. But you know, we like see the value in what she's done outside of the system.
That's what I
anyway.
mean. Yeah, that's
And
how
so-
that's how she's right. And they
Right.
even in Saru and the Admiral even admit that, you know, they understand why she did it, but you know, still you didn't do it right.
So I don't
Well,
know.
I
and
think
don't know
she's
what
right. What does that say about me?
I also think she's right. Erin?
Like I think that comes from the example of like leadership, in which an old school Star Trek series, the captain would be like, aha, we could have it both ways, and then like figure out some kind of complicated science or political way to like resolve this. But I didn't see that in this episode. I didn't see them working together.
There's
Like
just
Michael
tension
and the
there.
captain were like very much at odds, and I think like that's the part that I miss, but that's the part I think that also is hard as a leader on a team where you're dealing with all of these conflicting requirements, but something that's really, really necessary.
Wow. We have talked a lot. We've made some very interesting points. I have a lot to think about, but I think right now we should take a short break before we return with our commitment to reconciliation and some more Star Trek discussion. Welcome back to Worse Than the Borg. Every week, we pick a new organization that makes a positive impact in their community, and we make a donation to them as part of our commitment to reconciliation. Last week, we supporting our youth, Toronto. And Ron, would you tell us who we're going to spotlight this week?
Yeah, this week we are spotlighting Glad Day Bookshop, which just won 2 awards, Best LGBTQ Bar and Best Bookstore in Toronto. They're the first queer-focused Canadian bookstore ever, the oldest queer bookstore worldwide. They serve the LGBT community since 1970 and offer a huge selection of books for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, two-spirit people. In 2016, they incorporated Glad Day Lit as a separate nonprofit organization so they could expand their capacity and funding to support the community they serve. I think one of those things right now is a peer support network. So we are going to be making a donation to them. I would also encourage all of our Tune-in-Terrans to do the same by going to www.gladdaylit.ca. That's GLADDAYLIT.ca/donate. And just another thing to love about the Glad Day bookstore, a lot of the rights and abilities that LGBTQ plus people have today are actually directly tied to their legal actions around the time that they got off the ground. So would encourage you to look into the history and also support them to support our community by going to gladdaylit.ca/donate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. I love going to Glad Day. I live just up the street from the bookshop, actually. Now, I've been going there for years, but as of last year, I moved in just up the street. And even throughout the pandemic, they've had wonderful patio service, and they are one of the few restaurants I've seen that really takes COVID-19 seriously, and their rules are much stricter than everyone else on the strip. So I just really want to give my own personal shout out to Glad Day Bookshop.
And Shane, did you not mention you ran into one of the actors in
That was
in Glad
me.
Day? That
I
was
forgot
you.
about that.
Keen
I
listeners.
can't believe
Apparently,
I
I'm
forgot
not
about it while
one.
I was actually reading that out. But Ian Alexander, who
That's right.
plays Gray, Gray Tall, and then Gray, I don't know. Last winter, I was on a day off having a beer and a read, just sitting there, and Ian Alexander and his cool posse of fellow queers went through, and I had like oh my god, I know who you are, but I kept it to myself. Yeah. Also, I gotta say, before we launch into the rest of the conversation, You know what? I'll just bring it up here. Before you ask us questions, Erin, I've got a question for you. So the representation is a huge conversation that is happening around Star Trek and what they're trying to incorporate. We obviously have the things we love. We have our criticisms. I've got a lot of criticism, but I also just like silently wept during the conversation that they had in the mess hall between Adira and Stamets. You know, just a bunch of queer people just having a little conversation. Yeah, it was weird. They put all these weird structures into how they're doing it, but just chilling and being dorks. It was so sweet. I really loved that. So we started our conversation today with Erin sharing about her experience and what the representation in Star Trek was a barrier to even getting in on the ground floor. So I'm just curious, Erin, what your take is on where Star Trek has gotten. Is this a more accessible version? Is it, do you like it, or you know, I say probably your opinion is maybe even close to ours, which is there's some good and some bad.
Yeah, I think like I like the conversation. I didn't catch the 16-year-old engineer's name, but like I like how queer coded they were in there, just because it's like it's nice to have representation of like even how differently how people look. I'm not sure exactly how much they dig into that relationship, but I think particularly with science fiction, it's important to dig into like the what ifs and the explorations and how could we be like what would it take to have different kinds of, I'm going to say lifestyles, but like even talking from like the original series forward, like how can we represent different things and how can we see different ways of exploring folks? So I like that. I only saw that the queer coded folks only talk to the queer coded folks in the episode. So I was like, are they their own separate crew? Are they allowed to make friends outside of this? Again, I might be missing context.
Oh my gosh, you totally reminded me of my favorite piece of trivia about this season. The person who played Rin, the Andorian who had their antenna cut off, is Noah Averbach Katz, who in real life is the partner to Mary Wiseman, who plays Ensign Tilly. Now, on Twitter, Anthony Rapp revealed that he is part of a D&D campaign, a Dungeons and Dragons campaign run by Noah, and the other teammates are Blue Del Barrio, who plays Adira, Ian Alexander, who plays Gray, and Emily Coots, who plays Detmer. Does this not sound, Ronnie? I can already see that you're like...
I don't play D&D, but I would. If I got an invitation to that table, I would learn the whole thing. Like, there's such a cool group of people.
So instead of like, what is it, Officers Poker Night, I really want to see like Lower Decks D&D.
That would be
so good.
That would be so good.
I hope that makes it into an episode.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be written in. And Erin, what about representation of women in the modern version? You know, like we have Burnham, we have Tilly. You know, they're kind of more fleshed out. And you know, you said that now that you know Seven of Nine, you love her, and so do like she's almost universally loved in the Star Trek fandom because Jerry Ryan killed that role. But for the modern version, like you don't know any of these people, you're just kind of walking in the door. What do you think?
Like,
are they?
Nobody seems. My concern, like with the 709 thing, was again just for like it was literally the marketing piece in which they really wanted to hypersexualize somebody in Voyager, and like Jerry Ryan's experience and the writer's experience with that is super interesting to dig into if anybody is Googling afterwards. I didn't see any of that hypersexualization in this episode alone. It seems like everybody's quite fair. I like fistfights in scenes, particularly when they just have folks like actually fighting each other and not having like, oh, you're a woman, so we're gonna like pair a woman, or like sometimes you have to stay. Like when both people have agency and like are swinging fists at each other. That's great. The representation of the admiral was great because he really broke through some glass ceilings of male admirals in Star Trek. I think that was the only one I've ever seen. So I'm glad that in the 32nd century, finally we could have some white dudes as an admiral.
Yes, we did it.
Absolutely.
I mean, so I think I've seen a lot of complaining on Twitter that we don't have any straight male representation on Star Trek right now, and there are men out there who are not watching, because it is kind of hinted to in a previous episode that this commander is also, or this admiral is also a queer person. So there literally are no straight white men in this show.
Erin is losing her mind.
I'm Catholic. That's so good. That's great.
And the nerds are mad. That was my comment off the top. All right, Shane, I'll stop derailing your process.
Oh no, this has been the best derailment ever. However, we have reached that point of the show, which is actually one of my favorite parts of the show, and especially today, because we get to ask our guest panelist, what the Trek? What to you, Erin, as a very casual viewer, made absolutely no sense, was totally morally questionable, or otherwise just completely confusing about this episode, the series, or even the whole franchise? We've already talked about a few of these things, but I'm sure you have a few more questions that make you say, what the Trek?
Only because, like, casual, I think, is even overestimating it. I didn't understand when in last episode of Discovery and when the episode started, but that's just more of a complaint on my part. They didn't show any title card or anything, so I was like 20 minutes in, and I was like, "This is still a recap." You can't help.
This is new, yeah.
That.
Okay.
Yep. Sounds good. I'm still sold. How tall is Captain Saru? Because it seems really inconsistent throughout this whole episode.
I think Doug Jones is, I'm pretty sure, 6'6", but I'm going to look it up for you right now.
And then he has like stilettos without a heel on, so it's like at least 7 feet.
Also, how much do I want those heel-less stilettos?
Great. They're so good.
It does not have a height for Saru, but Doug Jones... Sorry, go on.
No, because in the scene where he's talking to Michael at the beginning, where they have Book's hologram, he looks like he's 11 feet tall. And then like you see him walking around, and then he looks like he's 6.5 feet tall. And then in the last scene, he must have put those shoes on again.
Yeah, 1.93 meters, whatever that is.
That doesn't help you.
No, that doesn't help me at all.
This is a Doug Jones stan podcast, though. I mean, Doug Jones in real life is a straight white man, and as hostile as I guess the fandom is to straight white men these days, we love Doug Jones.
Yes, who is 60 years old, and my God, you would never know it.
He's 60?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ravi?
If you check out Worse Than the Borg's Twitter feed, we have retweeted a particularly great tweet. I won't do the thing where we read out the content of a tweet online, but check out the Twitter feed. I'll guarantee you it's a good laugh, and it relates to this idea of straight white men and representation of trans people and how there's such a double standard. So I'll leave it at that and point you to our Twitter feed, which is Worse Than Borg on Twitter.
I mean, just since we've been circling the representation drain, we know that Blue Del Barrio is a non-binary human being, and their character is also a non-binary person. However, we're still getting a lot of she, hers. And so we've been told, I feel like this is going to be addressed in the show, but we are still waiting. And there is also there's no mention that Gray, who is the blue-haired Ian Alexander, is trans male. He's just referred to as male, which is great, but it's still like kind of an erasure for what they're trying to accomplish.
Very interesting, and agreed. Yeah, not that I want every trans actor or trans character to be explicitly outed in everything that they do, but I feel like the whole point of having Ian Alexander and Blue Del Barrio in this season was to raise awareness of representation in this particularly hopeful franchise, and so to kind of sidestep both the gendering of Blue Del Barrio and not gendering, or like the lack of addressing Ian Alexander's trans identity. Yeah, it just seems interesting. Very interesting choices.
I guess. Oh, should I go back from or what the track?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to know.
What is with all the? Did they explain goopy technology or just like future? We now have
Goopy
Everything is
technology.
goop.
It's just future.
It's
Just future.
Future goop. Yep, nanogels and
Programmable matter is
Yeah.
what they're calling it.
Because like all of Voyager, they had I think it was like the ship was imbued with biomatter or something, and they just like
Yes.
never addressed it. So this is like
This
The
is
next
that.
step, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. I
It
guess.
means that we can do more CGI for less money now. So
Yes.
we're gonna
Yeah.
do it.
There's so much CGI.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it was mostly, and I think my biggest question was like, what's going on with the alternate? Wait, no, you said mirror universe.
Yes. Right. So
What?
oh my gosh, you only saw one episode of the first season of
I
Discovery.
saw
Well,
the pilot.
let me tell you, the mirror universe is apparently the most important universe because it is dealt with in the entire season of season 1. It is dealt with
Relevant.
for the back half of season 2, and now it is clearly going to play a major part in the back half of season 3. Prime Giorgio did die. Spoiler alert, sorry.
No, that was the one part that I knew happened, and then she was in the first 30 seconds of this episode, and I was very confused.
The mirror universe Giorgio somehow came to our universe and somehow embedded herself in Section 31, the Black Ops of Starfleet, and in a very untypical character decision, decided to join the crew of the Discovery at the end of the last season and go on this journey into the future, I guess, to see what kind of havoc she could wreak in a new space-time.
I did really enjoy the line, your moods range from cranky to homicidal.
Yes.
Pretty accurate.
See, because I thought she was like a cyborg or something, like it was a Picard setup, and you could have the settings wrong. That could be an option.
Like they accidentally forgot to flip the switch from evil to good. Yeah,
Which
for
is
sure.
a great ongoing joke in Lower Decks.
Yes. I mean, those are all great points. I don't think I answered your question, but maybe a little context help.
Well, if the mirror universe is the most important thing that in the first 2 seasons, and then they switch to another universe, wouldn't that mean that the mirror universe is the prime universe? Like, how do you know if you're in the prime or secondary universe?
There's no answer.
I mean, this
You just,
is a Star Trek problem from the jump. They just like create more universes, and then I don't know, like the movie reboot. That's a different universe. Like in Voyager, they go to they steal Harry Kim from a parallel universe, and
There's the whole Year from Hell ongoing one that is an amazing episode.
Which is multiple universes.
I love that one.
Oh, that has to be our special
So
episode.
there's no way to know what universe you are in. You just have to
hope that you're in the prime one.
Well, because going back to the representation, at least with the earlier series of Star Trek, I knew I was in the mirror universe when everyone was really into BDSM very much for some reason.
Oh no, that's very much the same in this in Discovery.
Oh, okay, cool. Then we still have a marker. We're fine. We're fine.
That's how you can tell that this Giorgio is clearly the mirror universe Giorgio, because she is obviously Dom top.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, did we miss anything this episode? We have really talked a lot. Ravi?
I don't know if anyone missed it, and this is just a quick one, but Tolor appeared to be a computer generated character. He's the bully. He's the bully that Philippa, says will
crack.
Let me try that again. Yeah, let me try that again. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but Tolor, the bully who runs the work camp, appears to be a computer generated Orion character, and I wasn't really aware why that was necessary, or if it was truly computer generated. It just looked a bit funny. I'm looking at the image now. I'm mostly sure that's computer generated character, and that's the first time they've done it with an Orion character. And I
Oh,
guess
I
I'm just wondering
disagree.
why. Why would you need to? Am I wrong?
I think in the I think it was the first episode of this season, we meet like an Andorian and an Orion who are kind of guarding some hub or whatever. I've already forgotten. It's been 6 episodes.
Yeah.
I can't remember what happened in that episode. But I distinctly remember thinking, wow, their skin looks weirdly perfect. And I think it is a mix of great makeup. I did watch the video of Noah Averback Katz getting into the Andorian makeup and the, like, I'm guessing 3-hour process that took. I have a feeling that there was a very similar process for the Andorian, and then maybe they softened the edges with some CGI, but I guarantee there is a person underneath there.
There's a person underneath that. Okay, so it looks, I guess that's sort of a weird evolution in like production, that you can get to a point where it's actually a real person, but it looks so much like, it's so perfect it looks like CGI.
It kind of looks like he's in the uncanny valley.
Yeah,
you know,
he's in
there is kind of a
which, so I guess that's sort of my own personal what the trek is like. What's happening with these characters? But if it were CGI, why? That would be my question, because it's the easiest makeup to put on.
Green paint. Literally,
it's
have
just
you ever
Tobias
first
Junke
episode.
with
Yeah.
green. That's all it is.
Have you seen how bad he looks like Tobias in all those episodes? It's terrible. Also, he has to do that for hours.
And there's blue paint everywhere. We're talking about Arrested Development, by the way. That is going to be my third podcast adventure.
Exactly. Sign me up. Yeah.
I I loved that 21st century vernacular has persisted up until the 32nd century. There was a lot of like, this is the bomb, and oh my gosh. And when Stamets runs into Adira, she does an old-timey voice, like, this is an old man speaking kind of thing. Like, do those things really carry through for 900 years? Are we going to be talking the same way in 3189 as we do today?
Who says the bomb now? Like, that didn't make it past the end of TNG, let alone into 900 1200 years in the future, wherever we are.
Because don't they have those universal translators? Everybody has those universal translators into their earballs, right?
Oh, so maybe we're hearing in the 21st century what we... Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
We're just hearing millennial.
Yeah, exactly.
because if they jump 900 years in the future, isn't that going back to like Canterbury Tales level Middle English for us? Like we would have to talk to somebody from
Yeah.
Middle English.
Exactly. Yeah, it would be very difficult for us to understand each other. I also really loved the cat tracker, the cat collar. Did anyone notice that its little ping was a meow sound?
Yes, I did.
I want one for my Oliver.
But why couldn't that have been like, again, going back to the missed opportunities, that would have been a great moment for them to like be caught out, is they're hearing a meow, like little gems like that. There's like, come on, writers, get there. That would have been so fun.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did not tee it off. Yeah. Did we miss anything else?
I just want to celebrate that Bryce got a line this episode.
Finally, first line of the season. I think.
And we got it. You know, we keep getting little shots of like Reese smiling at things and being super cute. Erin, these are 2 bridge crew members who do not ever speak, the 2 men on the bridge.
The bridge crew are contractually obligated to speak no more than 2 lines per season.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to celebrate for him. He got to speak.
Well, this has been a fantastic episode. I really loved speaking with our special guest, Erin. Erin, do you want people to follow you on social media? How can they?
Sure. I'm on all the social medias at emarchak, EMARCHAK on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to follow me if you like bikes and Star Trek.
I do. I am at Shane Came Back. Ravi is at Ravi Yi Joshi. Ron is at Ron Sly. And you can follow all of us collectively on Twitter at Worse Than Borg and on Instagram at Worse Than the Borg. And you can email us at worsethantheborg@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe and to rate us 5 stars if you like us, and please tell your friends. Thank you for listening. We have been Worse Than the Borg, and you have been assimilated into our collective. But resistance is never futile. Hailing frequencies closed.